You're listening to Achtung Millwall, broadcasting from the beautiful South Birmingham. Accept no substitute.
Hello dear listeners, welcome to another edition of Achtung Millwall, a midsummer time edition, as Eddie Cochran once sang. There ain't no cure for the summertime blues, and I think that's where I'm finding myself. How about yourselves, dear listeners? Are you bored yet with the endless days until the start of the football season? So, any road, I find myself sat outside the mothership, outside the den. I'm actually parked straight outside the club shop. It's a beautiful Sunday, very early afternoon. We've just gone 12 o'clock. And one of my most popular episodes that I've done was the occasion where I did a walk, a personal walk really, from the New Cross station to the site of the old den. I did it a couple of years ago now, and it's always proven to be a very popular walk. I did another one after that with Andrew, who does wall art on Twitter, walking from his childhood home through the Ilderton Road end of the old den. So I thought it might be nice, just as an experiment, sound of passing cars on Zampa Road, dear listeners, to do something similar. I'm going to walk, or more properly, I'm going to drive it. It's only a short walk. I'm going to sit in the car and feign that I've walked it. I haven't really. It's going to be me in the car. But I thought it might be nice just to explore the route from the site of the current stadium, the new den, as it was known when it was built in 1992 to 1993, and we're just going to follow the very short distance to the site of the old den, basically going left onto Ilderton Road, left onto Surrey Canal Road, and down through Mercury Way onto Coldblow Lane, and through the nondescript estate that was constructed on the site of the old ground. Whether this will work or not, I don't know. Part of the joy of doing podcasting, in my opinion, is you try new things, you try different things. But I was slightly a couple of inspirations for this. I saw a photograph on Twitter of I think it was a real photograph. I don't think it was constructed, of the new den being built in 1993. It must have been taken from a high point, taking in Coldblow Lane with the new den beyond, so both stadiums in the same shot. So there was that. And then I was also looking on the net. I found a wonderful website called Bermondsey Boy, stacked full of fascinating information, dear listeners. But part of the inspiration for this was a posting that I saw on there on Stockholm Road / Earlham Road, Erlam, which is the former site of where the houses that were on the site where we built a new stadium in 1992. Just reading the post here, they've got some photographs, some fascinating photographs of Earlham Road, Senegal Road, which does still exist, more in name than real presence. That's a turning off of Surrey Canal Road, which we'll go past shortly. But this chap has posted regarding Earlham Road, Stockholm Road, and Zampa Road. So he says Earlham Road ran between Senegal Road and Haydock Road, all of which now lie under Millwall's pitch. And the south stand at the den, which would be the Coldblow Lane end as we would know it, was known as Mud Island. I do remember something in one of Danny Baker's biographies talking about the area around here as being Mud Island. I think the ground must have been particularly boggy. This chap here adds that Senegal Road, which is off of Surrey Canal, was once also known as Senegal Way. But he's got some photographs here, and these were your traditional kind of local back-to-back Victorian houses, all of which took heavy damage in the Second World War, in the Blitzkrieg in 1940, which left the area somewhat scarred, he says, never having experienced anything like it himself. My own family were bombed out of Verney Road, which obviously is at the junction of Zampa Road and Ilderton Road. So nowadays Verney Road is unrecognisable from the past. I think only the school and maybe the pub over there. Well, no longer a pub, is now being turned into flats, isn't it? That would be the only thing that remains from the past. But certainly the houses here, Earlham Road, Senegal Road, were your traditional Victorian terraced houses. These houses were eventually demolished and replaced by prefabs. There's something for the younger generation to pick up on: prefabricated housing, which was brought in as a means of rehousing people at the end of the Second World War. Much damage, obviously, across London and the other major cities of our country. In the late 1960s, the poster writes, the prefabs and the houses in the surrounding streets of Haydock, Senegal and Earlham Roads were demolished, giving way to Senegal Fields. So just an open patch of ground, really, which has now become the new den, as he puts it. Apparently, a poster replies that this part of Stockholm Road, which is over by the bridge on Stockholm, I don't know if on match day you come in that way, it's kind of semi-industrial now. I think there's a big church that uses one of the old warehouse spaces over there. But there's an ice cream factory there back in the day. It was called a Vita Cream factory. Opened in 1929. It made cream. They say ice cream, but this advert they've posted here only speaks of cream for the bakery trade. So I'm going to guess that's the kind of cream they used to stick in fancy cakes at your local bakers, like those old ones with the used to call them cheesecakes. They weren't cheesecakes. They had bits of like coconut strips on there. But that was located on Stockholm Road, 1954, the Vita Cream factory. And below that is another advert for a completely different industry: tar macadam, tar paving, asphalt, artificial stone, ACW Hobman and Co. At Cliftonville, which I'm going to guess is where the Cliftonville Tavern was prior to its unfortunate demise in 2000-ish, after the riot, the post-Birmingham riot, of course. But this advert is dated, the London Advertiser, 1909, ACW Hobman, tar paving, tar macadam, asphalt. Industrial work generally. This was an industrial area, and obviously the housing here catered both for the docks, but also the huge amount of industry that was located. You get no sense of that at all now. You see kind of what I would term light industry, motor trades and delivery, toing and froing kind of setups, but nothing in the sense of the heavy industry and factories that once populated the area. It was interesting. I've just driven through the Rotherhithe Tunnel to come down here today, and I must have passed about 3 or 4 people with, there was an Ajax shirt, there was a Barcelona shirt, someone else had a foreign side, I couldn't tell you who it was, looked like a German kind of, football shirt on. This area has changed so dramatically, it's very hard to get that across. But this, you do get a sense of it reading these pieces here. Earlham Road, another poster replies, which is now lost, yes, because that's in the middle of the pitch, roughly where the centre circle stands. There's a picture here of a kind of a church that was located. I'm also indebted to Phil Clark, who also has picked up the fact that there was a church, St Mary's Mission Church, South Bermondsey, located roughly where the centre circle of the stadium was. St Mary's Church once stood there, all derelict post Second World War, but the church looked moderately spectacular on the inside. It's got like a vaulted ceiling with the altar underneath it. Photos of choir kids for the choir and whatnot, all pre-Second World War, October the 12th, 1912, so pre-First World War, these photos that I'm looking at. Phil, as I say, did some research which he forwarded on to me kindly regarding St Mary's Church, which apparently is listed in a book by a chap called Michael Yelton, 12 Lost Churches of London, Empty Tabernacles. There was a Reverend Fenton, but no relation to Benny, which would be, as Phil says here, a very odd turn of events. But the pictures that Phil found obviously had the same high vaulted altar roof, which I will stick online, but also a more 1963, a much more lonely looking St Mary's Church, now surrounded largely by derelict land and rubble and whatnot. The area really did take a pounding. My own family were bombed out of Verney Road, finished up living in Downham in Kent during the course of the Second World War. And I bet your family too, dear listener, if you're a local, you would also have felt the the brunt of Adolf Hitler's Blitzkrieg. Certainly affected the area around here. So there we are. Once upon a time, Zampa Road, Earlham Road, Haydock Road, Stockholm Road still exists, but much changed. So we're going to take off now. We're going to go along the Surrey Canal Road and pause somewhere around Mercury Way, wherever I can find a little hidey hole. So I'll be back very shortly, dear listeners. Just going to go under the railway arch on Zampa Road with the iconic image of Neil Harris on the left side. It was repainted, of course, because there was an original graffiti version of the image of Neil Harris with his arms raised, and I think it was in one of the games against Leeds where he scored. It's been redone by British Rail with the Millwall FC lion, leaping lion on the opposite wall. Prior to Neil Harris being there, of course, there was another iconic piece of graffiti there, which was put in 1995 when Harry Cripps passed away. Harry Cripps, God bless. I've got a photo of that, and I will stick that online. It's been fairly commonly posted. I nicked it off the internet, so you know, it's not unknown. Just waiting for the green lights. Ladies crossing the road with children going to the church. I'm just going to turn into Ilderton Road now. Church turnout time at the moment, dear listeners. Very colourful African church. Ilderton Primary School, directly opposite on the corner of Verney Road. My old man must have gone there at some point. He actually went to about 12 schools during the course of evacuation and bomb sites and whatnot during the course of the Second War. Must have been a very disruptive period nowadays. You know, a child that went to 12 schools would have received special attention. Back then, zero special attention. We're turning on the Surrey Canal Road now. As the name implies, this was Surrey Canal, the Grand Surrey Canal, dear listeners. I'm going to pull into Mercury Way and tell you a little bit more about the Surrey Canal, because it fed into the Surrey Docks, which was the prime reason, the catchment area for the workers that served those docks, for our club to come across the river from the failing area, as it was then, of the Isle of Dogs, North Greenwich as it was called, the back of the Lord Nelson area around there, to travel across the river. But we're going to pull into Mercury on the right side. Actually, that is Senegal Road, so on my left, just before the railway bridge. That little stumpy driveway is called Senegal Road. You can't see it, listeners. I'm telling you what it is and where it is. And you're going to have to look on your Google Maps or use your imagination. We're actually driving behind the rear side of the old den. So I'm going to turn on to Mercury Way, the winged messenger of the gods, Mercury, of course. There we are, Mercury Way. And to my right, Bridge Meadows, which is the site of, this would be the halfway line, wouldn't it, falling towards the Ilderton Road end. A very nondescript. Apologies if anyone listening lives there, because I don't mean to slag it off particularly. It just seems such a shame for the site of our old ground, which I'm going to go down to in a moment, to be unmarked. It just seems wrong. Anyway, back to the Grand Surrey Canal. That was on Surrey Canal Road. It was opened from the docks to serve the Surrey docks. Opened in 1807, the great period of canal building in our country prior to the construction of railways. Canals were the means by which you moved freight around the country in the Industrial Revolution. 1807, it went from the Old Kent Road to Camberwell and to Peckham in 1826. Its main purpose was to transport cargo, primarily timber, or also known as deal, and there was a Deal Porter's Way in the Surrey Quays shopping centre now, isn't there? Yeah, the Act of Parliament allowed it to be closed 1801, so it was quite old. It was closed in the 1970s. I think it had become pretty much a dumping ground for any old soot that people had, and obviously its original purpose of moving timber from the docks had failed with the closure of the docks, which happened in the 1970s. The Greenland dock closed in the 1970s, and that was the death knell for the Surrey Canal Road, which was filled in the end, as with so many other stretches of the canal. They were filled in and reused as roads. Once served all the way down from the Surrey docks all the way out to Croydon, if you can believe that. Such was the level of national infrastructure, canal infrastructure as we would call it nowadays. Now, as I said, the Millwall moved south from the docks of the Isle of Dogs, moved southwards in 1910. The reason for that was that the area was no longer capable of supporting a club of ambition, and I think one thing leaps out of me as I've done the various history shows with Neil Fissler and the ones I've done myself over time, is that we are a club that have never really wanted for ambition. We've always gone for it on a perhaps an unusual scale for a club that's never really succeeded. We're triers, I think that's probably the best way to put it. I'm just coming down to the junction with Coldblow Lane. The legendary, the iconic walk is going to be to my left. I'm not going to go down there today, under the railway arch walkway that burned itself into my soul as a child. There was actually railway lines set in the floor here. I think that is mentioned on an old map that I've got hold of for the purposes of today's little jaunt. Coldblow Crossing. This area was once, well, it was originally farmland. There is a map dated in the 1820s showing Coldblow Farm. Just waiting for the minicab to get through the width barrier, which seems to have defeated it. I'm just waiting at a width barrier, dear listeners, alongside what would once have been the entrances to the iconic football ground. Come on, mate. I'm going to pull in to where the plaque was, past tense. It's gone, missing from the side of John Williams Close. I'm just going to pull in now. I'm going to take a photo of it. I'm going to harass Lewisham Council on that front, because we made a lot of effort back in 2010 when I was doing the Lions Trust chairmanship back then. We went to a lot of effort to get a plaque put up there, and it looks like somebody's nicked it. So I'm going to get a photograph of that, and we might do a bit of chasing up on that, listeners. What do you think? So John Williams Close. Who was John Williams? Don't know. Nothing to do with anything with Millwall Football Club related, that's for sure. Which was the shame of it all. It all just went. Bellway Homes named nothing after anything to do with our club, and it might as well have never have been here. And the creation of the plaque, which was fairly low placed, and I must admit when it was put up there, it was one of the things that kind of bothered me a little bit, because it was so low that it was highly nickable. It looks like somebody has indeed nicked it. But I'm now out on the Shanks's pony. There's an old fashioned term for you youngsters. And I'm going to walk through John Williams Close, past all these red brick blocks of flats. Just walk past the Lewisham bins, which just spilled out onto the pavement here. Lovely. So yeah, John Williams, don't know, probably some Herbert for the Bellway Homes. But yeah, this was the site then of Coldblow Farm. I've got a map here, which I don't know if I can see. It's quite bright sunshine. So yeah, the Surrey Canal junction there, and below that is Coldblow Farm. This is dated 1874, so it was still farmland at that point. It became a market garden, and amongst other sites south of the river, when Millwall was looking to move locations, great names and figures in our club's history like Fred Thorne, Elijah Moore and others went on scouting missions. I think one of the other alternative sites was at the back of the New Cross Gate, the pub there. What's it called? It's the can't remember the name of the pub opposite New Cross Gate Station. You'll have to tell me, dear listeners. I don't know everything, and I can't. That name's gone out of my head. But that was one of the alternative sites for the Mill Stadium. So I'm just trying to weigh up where I would have been. I've walked straight in John Williams Close. This would have been on the pitch now. Very strange sense. I'm going to try and see if I can walk through to the site of the old New Cross Stadium, which overlooked the old den. I don't think I can walk through these bits here, but it's a pleasant enough estate, but it's there's nothing Millwall related here. So we're going to try and chase up Lewisham anyways. We haven't pounded them for a long time, have we, listeners? High time we did. I'm roughly on the site of the halfway line terracing, place I spent many years. I first went, as I've said quite a few times, and I'll say it again, 1972, for a place that made such an impact on me. It's actually quite a short span of time that, for me, it existed really, from 72 to its final days in 1993. It's only 21 years. I've been going to the new ground for a lot longer, one way and the other. Walking through some bushes leading up, I think, to Bridge House Meadows, which was the site of the old New Cross Stadium. See what we can see up here. Well, I didn't expect there's a lot of people sunbathing up here. It's a bit like a few years ago we went to Berlin and walked through the main park in Berlin, and of course out there they've got like a nudist culture. I didn't expect to come across about 5 or 6 blokes stretched out in full Starker mode. But anyway, yeah, there's loads of people sunbathing up on these fields which are called Bridge House Meadows, dear listeners. No trace of the old Greyhound or Speedway Stadium. Perhaps a mound over there. I don't know if that would have been one end of the old ground. That used to overlook the football ground. This would have been roughly... I'm talking to you like you can see what I can see. I do apologise. But I'm roughly on the site once known as Jews Hill, which overlooked the ground. It was like a spot where you could go for a free view of the Coldblow Lane Stadium. So this roughly would have been where the totalisator board would have been, which was, when I first started going in 72, was a main feature. You could see it beyond the terracing at where the Alderson Road end met the halfway line. Tote board backed onto the ground, and you could see the outline of the stands and other parts of the stadium. I thought I'd just give a mention, if you don't mind, dear listeners, to New Cross Stadium, which was quite a local feature. Many Millwall fans once upon a time would have alternated their leisure activities between going to football, Millwall, and going to watch the dogs or the Speedway, which was a huge sport back in the 40s and 50s. So I'm just looking at the Wikipedia entry for New Cross Stadium, which would have been on this site here where I am now. I was going to take a photograph, but there's loads of people sprawled out everywhere. I might get myself into kind of hot water, mightn't I? You don't want that. I want to keep on as my podcasting career unblemished with, that kind of thing. But New Cross Stadium, located off of Hornshay Street, which backs onto the newer buildings. There's like an estate at the back there. Was an athletic stadium originally, built in the early 1900s, but later mainly used for greyhound racing and speedway. It was immediately adjacent to the old den. It was often used as a training ground. I didn't know that, when they didn't have facilities of their own. I'm going to guess that would have been in the 1930s, maybe 50s even. The track was referred to as the Frying Pan. It was quite a small track, and it was built inside the greyhound track, and had banking all the way round. So there's a slight hill that I'm looking at across the field as I'm standing here. You've got the chimney of the power station that overlooks our current ground off in the distance, and there's a banking. I'm going to guess that's part of the banking that they're talking about here. The stadium operated for many years and closed in 1969. It had a capacity in its heyday of 26,000 and was eventually demolished in 1975. I wanted to mention one particular name just to close this little jaunt around the former sights and sounds of the area. I wanted to mention a famous speedway rider. My dad mentioned this name when he was alive a few years ago. Tommy Farndon. Now the name of the speedway team that operated out of New Cross was called the New Cross Rangers. Quite a successful side. Attracted huge crowds. And so on the 28th of August 1935, Tommy Farndon was the star rider for the New Cross Rangers, the team that operated out of New Cross. A local idol, I think, when you read the accounts of his funeral. He crashed in a race and unfortunately died in the aftermath of his injuries at a local hospital. He was thrown through the air and died. And there was a huge memorial service held at this particular location, of which there's now no trace whatsoever. I'm just reading from the local paper. I think this is the local South London Press, I believe. The late Tom Farndon Memorial Service, dated August 1935. Impressive scenes. New Cross bids its last farewell to Tom Farndon yesterday morning. Sorrowing crowds, composed mainly of women and girls, flocked to New Cross Stadium to take their part in a short memorial service. The coffin, draped in his speedway colours of orange and black, rested amidst a carpet of flowers, and the coffin had a beautiful wreath from his young widow alongside his crash helmet. Nearby on the ground was Speedway's greatest laurel, the British individual trophy, a trophy held longer than any other. Heavy clouds parted and a watery sun peered down on the silent watchers of this impressive scene as Mrs. Farndon, the widow, arrived. I think that's quite touching, and I don't know why. I wanted to mark that. When I read it, I wanted to mark it, and I wanted to come here just to say that's what happened here. This field, with locals now spread-eagled out in the sun, was once a place where people cared about, like the den behind me. I'm looking across what was the halfway line. I'm going to walk backwards now, and these were places that people came to and cared about, just like we care about our club now. So I just want to say, rest in peace, Tom Farndon. You're not forgotten, mate. I never knew you. I've read about you, and what happened here. So I'm going to walk back now through the estate, across what was once a place that meant as much to me as it would have done to those women and girls that idolised Tommy Farndon all those years ago, back in the 30s. And I'm going to call it quits. I don't know if this will work. Do tell me if you enjoy this shows like it. I've got a couple of other ideas for walks locally, and see if I can do something to do some justice to some of the history of the area. It's my intention. I'm going to walk down these steps. I'm going to walk back towards what was once the entrances to Coldblow Lane. So thank you for listening to this, dear listeners. Hope you enjoyed it. Do tune again later in the summertime. I'll try and do some more of this. If you enjoyed it, do let me know what you thought. Until then, Arrivederci Millwall, and bye for now.